Welcome to GDs, and this is Bad Sisters, Season 1, Part 2. John, wanting to impress his boss, asks him to join him for fishing, but he cancels at the last moment. His neighbor Roger, being at the pier, wanted to join him, but John shuts him down and lets him know that they are not friends. The rest of the sisters try to talk with Bibi, but she was quite disturbed about hurting someone's eye and was not willing to see them. Ursula still wants to continue, suggests to Eva that they should drug him and drown him in his own bathtub, as it will minimize the chances of collateral damage. In addition, the drug they will be using won't show in his postmortem. But Eva was not ready to move forward for the moment. Becka, having a bond with Minna, continues to see her, despite John not liking it. But Minna was happy to see her. Minna also gives her an old check, thinking that she is her daughter. Back at John's house, Grace tells John that she will be joining an art class, and Blenade was happy to hear the same, as she wanted her mom to have something of her own. Returning from the class, Grace was quite happy, and she dances with their neighbor Roger. But when John sees them, he was not happy with her. He then makes an anonymous complaint, implying that Roger is a pedophile, and it leads to him being questioned by the police, who also confiscated his computer. Later, Grace tries to get intimate with John, but he was not willing. Grace suggests that they could see a doctor, but John turns it on her, making her feel that she is responsible for everything. Grace, believing the same, asks her sisters for advice, but they assure her that she is not at fault. Seeing Grace losing herself every day, Eva was now ready to go after John again, and she tells Becka to apologize to Bibi, as they will not do anything without her. Becka and Bibi reconcile, and the sisters were ready to go after John again. Ursula gets the drugs from the hospital, and the sisters, knowing that Grace and Blenade will not be home for the night, sneak into their house and drug John's nasal spray. As he returns and takes the spray, he passes out on his bed. The sisters prepare to move him into the bathtub, but he suddenly awakes. John, being in a drugged state, urinates in his closet, and then gets into his car and drives to the marina. The sisters followed him, and they see him trying to get into his boat, but he falls in the water. The sisters were happy seeing him drown, but as fate would have it, Gabriel sees him from his nearby boat, and he jumps in the water and saves him. With him being saved, the sisters rushed out from there, but Gabriel was able to spot Eva. John later awakens in the hospital, under suspicion of trying to commit suicide. Grace tries to talk with him, wanting to know what happened. But John shuts her down, and tells her that someone is trying to kill him. Nevertheless, with this being the day when he has his interview scheduled for the promotion, he rushes to the office. Eva gave her interview first, and was confident of getting the promotion. But as John went to give his interview, he threw Eva under the bus, revealing that she took a sabbatical to deal with her drinking issues, further insinuating that it still interferes with her work. As a result, John was promoted. Eva questions her boss, wanting to know why she was not promoted. Her boss tells her what he learned, and explains to her that he was looking for someone more stable for the position. Eva, knowing that only John knew about her sabbatical, was even more pissed at him. In the present, Matt and Becka continue to see each other. Matt, spending time at Becca's house, sees the check that Minna wrote to her. While Tom, investigating John's death, learns about his suicide attempt. As he looks into it, he finds that John claimed in the interview at the hospital that he believes someone tried to kill him. Teresa, learning about the events, suggests to Matt and Tom that they should talk with the person who saved John, and listening to her advice, Matt and John go to see Gabriel. As they talk with him, they learn that he saw Eva with at least one of her sisters that night on the pier. He further tells them that Eva told him not to tell anyone that he saw her there. In addition, we also learn that him and Eva are no longer friends. Knowing this, and Matt having the photo of the check that Minna gave Becka, they felt that they now have enough to get John's body exhumed. Thus they go back to Inspector Loftus, and with all the information they collected, Loftus agrees to exhume John Paul's corpse, so that they can do a thorough autopsy. Meanwhile, Matt and Becka continue to get closer, despite knowing the adversarial positions they had. Back in time, we see that John went to thank Gabriel for saving him, but in the process, he spotted him with another man, and decided to leave unannounced. Later, as Gabriel confronts him in the office for falsely labeling Eva, John reveals to him that Eva is no one's friend, and she even sold him out, and he tells him that he learned from Eva about his sexual orientation. This resulted in Gabriel leaving the office, and the relationship between him and Eva turning sour. John also gets into an argument with Grace, which results in Grace falling and being admitted to the hospital. As her sisters come to see her, she tells them that she slipped, while John pushes her sisters out. Her sisters, seeing Grace, knew that they cannot stop, and they will have to come up with a new plan. Becca, being close with Minna, goes to give her a massage, and this time she learns that John comes to check on her once a week, but every time he comes, he spends more time in their basement. As Minna falls asleep, Becca goes down to the basement to investigate. In the basement, she finds a walk-in freezer, and was able to find its keys, and she opens it. Inside the freezer, Becca was surprised to find the frozen corpse of George, John Paul's father, hidden beneath taxidermy specimens. We then get to see further back in time, when John Paul visited his father George, who was working in his basement. John asks his father for a loan, but his father refuses, and humiliates him. It is when he begins choking on a glass eyeball. But John, instead of saving him, lets him die, and he hides his body in the walk-in freezer. And with Minna having dementia, he was able to manipulate her, by making her believe that George walked out. Becca, discovering the freezer, tells her sisters what she found. She then tells them that she has a plan to get rid of John, and this time, she plans to lock him in the freezer. The sisters were not excited about the plan, and wanted to see it themselves first. Becca later shows them the freezer, and how she plans to lock John. But Eva was not comfortable with allowing Becca to do the same. Meanwhile, John was quite happy getting the promotion, and in order to show Eva who is the boss, he questions her work. Eva, knowing that he will continue to undermine her every step of the way, decides to quit, and she leaves the office. While Becca, knowing that her idea could work, gets a nod from Ursula and Bibi to go ahead. Thus, Becca hides in a closet on the day she knows John will be coming, and when she sees someone going into the freezer, she locks the door. As she wakes up in the morning, she learns that John is still alive. It is when we learn that John never went to Minna's house last night, as he was confronted by Ben, since Ursula told him what he did. While Becca, instead of locking John, locked Minna inside the freezer. And it was John who found Minna's body. John lays his mother on the bed, showing that she died in her sleep, while he disposed of his father's body. In the present, Inspector Loftus's team exhumes John Paul's body. Tom messages Matt to tell him the same, but the text on his phone was seen by Becca. Becca rushes to the cemetery, where she sees John Paul's body being dug up. She then informs her sisters the same, and they get quite worried, thinking they might end up in prison. Back in time, Becca felt quite guilty of being the one responsible for Minna's death, and she wanted to confess. But her sisters were able to help her heal. At Minna's funeral, Roger sees Oscar's grave, and he realizes that it was John who tried to frame him. While Eva learns from John that he plans to celebrate Grace's birthday at their newly built cabin. Grace also wants to spend time with her sisters on her birthday, thus she asks them to join them at the cabin in the morning. Later, John and Grace go to their newly built cabin, and as Grace starts to prepare the dinner, Roger shows up at their cabin, and he confronts John. He tells him that he knows it was him who framed him, but despite the same, he forgives him. While the rest of Garvey's sisters also reached a nearby town, as they will be going to the cabin the next morning. The sisters all go their separate ways, with Ursula going to meet Ben, while Becca goes to be at a local pub. In the present, Tom, being comforted by his wife, tells her the kind of trouble they are in. He then goes to find out if the police have anything, but he learns that the autopsy was inconclusive. While Teresa, trying to find something to help her husband, faints. As Tom returns home, he rushes his wife to the hospital. A desperate Tom calls his brother, not knowing what to do next. Matt comforts him and tells him to take care of his wife, and he will find something to help them out. Matt then goes to the pub, where the sisters claimed they were all night. Being at the pub, he was able to figure out that only Becca was at the pub the night John died, and the sisters were not together as they claimed. We then get to see in a flashback that Ursula insinuates to Ben that if John is gone, they could be together. While on the same night, Becca was alone at a pub. Bibi went for a run, and Eva was alone at the hotel. The next morning, Eva, Bibi, and Becca go to see Grace at the cabin, while Ursula got up late, and when she woke up, Ben was gone. As the sisters reach the cabin, they learn that John died last night. Grace tells her sisters that John wanted to see a game at a local pub, thus he went out at night, but he crashed into a tree and died. The sisters were supportive to Grace, but when she left, they all were quite happy about finally getting rid of John Paul, aka the prick. In the present, as Ursula goes to see Ben, he breaks up with her, telling her that he was shocked when she suggested that he should murder John, and thus, he cannot be with a person like her. While Matt, after finding out that the sisters were not together, tells Becca what he learned, but she doesn't give him anything. Later, as the sisters regroup, they wanted to know who was the one who killed John, but all four of them denied having any part of it. It is when Grace showed up, who just learned about her husband's body being exhumed, and seeing her sister's reaction, she learns that they already knew. It is when Grace reveals to them what happened on the night John died, while Matt goes back to the cabin to investigate. Grace tells her sisters that as she tried to get intimate with John, he was not able to perform. But instead of taking responsibility, he started to blame Eva, and he told her that Eva seduced him and got intimate with him 10 years ago, and this somehow broke him. But Grace, not believing him, and wanting him to stop bashing her sister, strangled him. Knowing this, Eva tells her that it was not the case, as she never seduced him. She tells her sisters that she was quite drunk, and was not able to stop John, as he forced himself on her, and this is what led to her becoming pregnant, and eventually miscarrying. But at the time, she was not able to come forward. Learning what kind of man John really was, they were all quite relieved that he was gone. Grace then tells them how she used the scarf and made John's death look like an accident. And she even buried him in the pajamas, which she used to strangle him. As Grace was describing the events, Matt, being at the cabin and looking at the details, was able to figure out what happened. Matt then calls Becca and tells her he knows how John died. Becca lets her sisters know the same, but assures them that she will take care of the situation. Becca meets with Matt and confesses to killing John. But Matt didn't believe her. She also prepared a poisonous drink, hoping it will resolve the issue. Later, as her sisters reach her house, they find that Matt was gone, and they were able to stop Becca from taking the poison. While Matt returns to see her again, we then see Matt destroying all the evidence he collected, and later going to his brother, who just became a father, and he tells him that Grace no longer wants John's life insurance claim, signifying how he and Garvey's sisters came to an understanding. And as the season ends, we see Grace thanking Roger, and we then learn that he helped her stage John's body. She also lets him know that she and Blenade will be moving in with Eva. And finally, she joins her sisters for the swim, now free from the shackles of John Paul. Thanks for watching. And if you liked it, please subscribe.